Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. Allison Stauber here, Consolidated Planning Group, and we are excited to be back here with Annalee Kruger with Care Right. And our topic today that we're going to be talking about is, are you ready for crisis? Care Right is an organization that Annalee founded that really helps people plan for crisis, plan for end of life, plan for the future, so that way that we're not trying to pick up the pieces in the middle of the crisis by just taking advantage of planning ahead. So we've partnered with Annalee in the past, and she brings a lot of great tips and tricks to the trade. So we're excited to talk about that today. I always like to go over a few housekeeping items. The first things first. We are in webinar mode today, and that means that we can't see you or hear you, but we do know you're there, and we invite you to put your questions in the chat box. We do realize that a lot of people do listen to this on podcast. Everyone that is attending today is going to get a copy of today's slides, so you don't have to make a note of everything that you hear today on today's webinar, and you're also going to get a link to the recording. If you are attending by podcast and you would like a copy of these slides, you can email us directly at contact@cpgcares.net. That's contact@cpgcares.net, or call us at 281-690-1177, 281-690-1177. Consolidated Planning Group is a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors and members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. We help families just like yours plan for the future of their loved one that has a disability, and that may be a child, it may be an adult child, it may be somebody who has a loved one that has a disability that is a senior. And this talk that we're doing today kind of covers all of the bases and checks all the boxes as we're thinking about. So whether you're planning for a loved one, a child that has a disability, or you're thinking about planning for yourself or any aging parents or family members in your life, this is going to be a great topic to listen to today. So having said that, I'm going to turn things right over to Annalee so we can get started and dig right into this content today. And just again, just a quick reminder that as we're going through the presentation today, if you have questions, we're going to be monitoring that chat box, and we're going to answer just as many questions as we can. From a planning perspective for your time today, this webinar will be finished at 1 o'clock, or it's basically going an hour. So thanks so much, Annalee, for coming back to us, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say today.
Very good. Thanks, Allison, and thank you everybody for hopping on this webinar. And I'll have my contact information at the end of the slides as well, just in case you have questions or this hit home for you and you want to have some further conversation about this. So if you're new to this presentation, my name is Annalee Kruger. I am an author and a national speaker on all things aging, family caregiving, dementia progression, caregiving to a loved one with dementia. I've been working in the senior care industry for over 30 years as a family caregiver consultant. I founded Care Right in 2011 and went virtual and global right away because families just simply do not live down the street from each other like they used to 30 years ago when I first started. So we facilitate family meetings, find out what's working well, what's not working well, the goals. And through the course of the discovery of these family meetings, that's how we create the customized aging plan for families all across the globe. We also have ongoing support services for the family caregivers, and it's all virtual and nationwide for like care advocacy, care coordination, and family meeting facilitation ongoing. Are you ready for a crisis? I just want to share that hopefully you're listening to this and things are going relatively well with your family members, but just know that when that time changes, we're here to step in and help you with care decisions and family dynamics. So as a family with a special needs loved one, you're familiar with the challenges of taking care of someone. You know that your role includes a wide variety of support for your disabled loved one, including educating yourself about the disability, medication and health management, which can get really overwhelming really quickly, especially if you have multiple people that you're overseeing their care and their care management for. Also, emotional support is critical, developmental and educational advocacy, financial planning for current and future care needs, and then preparing for the long term. Like, what does the future look like for my loved one? As all right, aging parents present a similar challenge. So just like your days and weeks may be consumed with different doctor's appointments for your special needs loved one, just think about when you get that call that your parent had a major stroke or a major car accident. Aging caregiving for aging parents is very much similar to that of taking care of an special needs loved one. As people age, they're increasingly likely to develop a physical or cognitive impairment that impacts their ability to function. Between ages 85 and 89, for example, more than half of older adults receive a family caregiver's help because of their limitations. From 90 and onward, only a minority of individuals do not need help from others. I mean, it's pretty common sense. As we get older, we don't get younger and we don't get more mobile. We know that we're going to need more and more care and assistance from others. As parents age, they're likely to need caregiving due to a death or a disability of a spouse, falls, strokes, some sort of illness, progression of dementia. Medication errors are so common with seniors who are trying to make it at home, and an inability to perform their ADLs, their activities of daily living like bathing, dressing, grooming, and toileting. So as our loved ones age, we know that they're going to need more and more help with that. Who's going to provide that care? Caregiving responsibilities increase over time. Again, we don't get healthier as we age. So we just need to know going into this aging journey that our loved ones will need more and more care and more oversight. But caregiving starts out small. We talk about the caregiver snowball. Caregiving responsibilities can start out small and feel manageable. Like, sure, I can stop at the grocery store, I can pick up your medications, I can prepare an extra couple of meals. But as your loved one needs more and more care and supervision and oversight and help, then pretty soon you're taking off work to go to doctor's appointments, you're scheduling all of the doctor's appointments, you're providing personal hands-on care, and you're also providing like transfer assistance from like chair to bed. And at some point, they'll need 24/7 care most likely. So when we talk about that caregiver snowball, know what the warning signs are before your caregiving responsibilities negatively impact your life in general, your family, your marriage, your relationships, your career, your finances, your retirement planning, and also your emotional and physical well-being. So we've got kind of the progression of the warning signs are pretty much always there if people are in tune to looking at them and not being in denial. So that's why I'm so glad that you're on this webinar so that you can be armed with the information that you're going to need as you have aging parents and they need more and more care. So there's always the warning signs, the initial warning signs that are kind of mild at first, where you might notice some forgetfulness or some weight loss with your loved one, unsteadiness when they're walking or making some poor decisions, not being able to manage their mail or not making, we let the car go on empty. So those are some examples of just kind of some red flags of things aren't going well for your loved one. But then there's more growing concern of your loved one is having more falls, you're getting more trips to the ER and hospitalizations, they're wandering or sundowning because of dementia. You're starting to get concerned that your loved one does have some sort of dementia and that maybe they're going to get scammed. You also start providing more care oversight and you start mentioning your concerns to your siblings, but no one takes you seriously. And then the next thing you know is you're in the minor disruption where now things are starting to take more and more effect on your personal life. You're missing more work, you're dropping off meals, and you're handling the medications, you're coordinating doctor's appointments, and you're starting to feel overwhelmed. So all of these things kind of have to be done like right now, right? Like you can't just wait to call the doctor until after you get off work. A lot of this stuff has to happen during normal business hours, which may be when you work. Your loved one's dementia has progressed, and you're starting to struggle to manage the mood, behavior, and personality changes associated with dementia. And then the next thing you know, and these are all, they just kind of all happen really quickly. Your caregiving responsibilities cause major disruptions in your life where your spouse is starting to say, look, I love your parents, but you got to figure out what you're going to do with them because I'm done canceling our vacations. Or I'm done having you not be present in our own marriage or our own family because you're so much in angst about what to do with your parents. You're missing out on more and more of your children and grandchildren's events. You try again to stress your concerns to your siblings, but again, they think that you're overreacting, and you start feeling alone in this caregiving journey and begin to wonder if you're in over your head. And then the next thing you know is we're in that next stage, that total burnout and crisis mode, where you're spending several hours a week tending to your loved one. Your siblings are not helping. You're feeling really angry, resentful, and overwhelmed and burned out. You spend most of your time and energy worrying and realizing that you are in over your head. You're fighting with your siblings and your spouse often. You don't know what to do, and your loved one is in and out of the hospital, and you're physically and emotionally and mentally just drained. And unfortunately, that's usually when families call us for, now it's not aging planning anymore, now it's crisis management. So how do you know when you're burning out as a caregiver? It's a little surprising to me when families call us and they're telling us how they just went through this whole journey of what I just talked about. Like, it's caregiving has derailed their emotional health, their physical health, their businesses, their careers, their finances, their relationships, but yet they don't realize how burned out they are. So here are some signs of caregiver burnout. Noticing that you're having your own change in your mood, behavior, and personality, your sleep, and physical and mental health. You're starting to notice some changes with those. You're starting to feel like life is out of control. Your career or your business is suffering. Your friends or family start saying, hey, we haven't seen you out and about. We're starting to get concerned about you. You sound like you're always just on edge, and that's not like you. So those are some warning signs, and you're just consumed by angst and overwhelm, and you're having more and more fights and disagreements with your siblings. So preparing for a crisis is vital because all of those slides that we just talked about are totally preventable if people have a plan. And that's what we have: a stroke, a fall, or a sudden illness. All the people who had major strokes last Thursday didn't wake up thinking, oh, I think I'm going to have a major stroke. All the people who were just in a major car accident didn't think, oh, of course I'm going to make it home from work. Well, there's millions of people who didn't make it home from work yesterday. So we know that life has its own agenda. We just need to be honest and be realistic and prepare for that. We know that adult kids are often thrust into the role of family caregiving without having any kind of knowledge about family caregiving, any kind of knowledge about the condition that their loved one has. And it's even more critical, planning is even more critical for families with those that have special needs members. The best self-care is making real changes that can provide long-term support to ease the burden and uncertainty of caregiving. CareRight offers solutions. We have the white glove approach all the way down to the do-it-yourself for those who want to do their own aging planning. They can read my book, The Invisible Patient. So we have a variety of services and products for people for any budget that they have.
Annalee, I just want to chime in here because I think it is important to note. I have been on this journey with others aging and finding care and things like that, and from beginning to end of life and things like that. And what I want to say is one of the reasons that we've invited you here today is because your company is a little different. There are a lot of referral companies out there, like, I won't name names, but you've heard of them, where they help you find a location for a family member that might need alternative residential living situations. And a lot of these referral companies, they tout their freeness and how free they are or how great they are. but they're working for these organizations that they're referring you to. So what I mean by that is they don't necessarily have the best interest of the patient in mind when they're making the referral, because they're being paid by these facilities. So I want to make it very clear that that is not how CareRight works. And when you are choosing to work with CareRight, this is truly customized solutions, very specific for the individual that you have in mind, and they're not getting kickbacks from these organizations. And I think that that's really, really important. It's important to find a place that may accept any coverage. If you have coverage that will cover some things, it's important to have a place that is exactly what the patient needs, not who was next in line on the list to get the referral. So I just wanted to chime in and mention that.
And I'm glad that you did, because we don't do placement. We are not a placement company. We're consultants. And so when you hear about those placement companies, there's no family meeting, there's no grab and go binder, there's no it is simply a transaction. It's like, oh, Ethel needs assisted living, here's the 6 places I get the kickback from, pick from one of those. And we're a concierge model service who are, yes, fee for service, because we're a holistic planner. So we look at everything that the family needs, and our client is the whole family. It's about the relationship. It's not a transaction. Most of our clients are on services through end of life. So for years, they stay on our advocacy services. So when is the right time to contact CareRight? Because that's one of the most frequently asked questions, is like, okay, this sounds good. When is the time that we should call you and just kind of talk about things? And I always say, again, right now, again, because life has its own agenda. Strokes, falls, dementia progression, and other incidents occur without any notice. Again, all the people who had strokes last Thursday didn't wake up thinking, I'm going to have a major stroke today and have my whole life and potentially finances derailed. Again, 58% of adult kids are thrust into the role of family caregiving without ever having any kind of family meeting about the what whens of aging. And that's what we do, is for those families who do plan ahead. It is an aging plan. And you can tell the people who plan ahead, just like in real life, when you have a plan in anything, whether it's business or your children or anything like that, anytime you have a plan in place, you have much better outcomes. It's just simply common sense. But unfortunately, 92% of our clients come to us in total crisis mode, overwhelmed, burned out. The kids are like, oh my gosh, we didn't realize dad's dementia progressed so quickly, or the spouse is burned out, or worse, the primary caregiver, elderly spouse, dies prematurely simply because they were burned out from not having any kind of aging plan in place. So it is critical that we talk sooner rather than later. And I'm sure that some of this is hitting home for those of you that are watching this. So we help families from start of services all the way through end of life. So we help families navigate aging, caregiving, dementia, chronic disease progression, care options, life transitions, all the way through end of life. So usually when someone starts with our services, whether it's crisis management or the actual aging plan, proactive aging plan, we'll say, here's what the outcomes are from the course of our family meetings. Goal is to age in place at home. That's great. Here's how you can age in place at home, and resources and technology solutions, all of that kind of stuff. So it's actually a written out how to age in place at home plan. And then if staying at home doesn't work, then that's when we do the care matrix, which we'll talk about here in a little bit.
And I just wanted to mention that, some of our aging parents, I know there's a variety of ages that are listening in today, but whether it's you or you are an aging parent yourself, a lot of folks are, proactive. They do want to have some say in this. So I think that is an important note too, is that if you are of sound mind and body right now, and you definitely want your wishes carried out, and you don't want to be a burden to other family members, you can take steps now to have that plan in place, and then, involve your kids and involve the other family members if this is the plan that we've laid out. It doesn't always have to be the kids are laying this plan out for the parents that didn't plan. So I think that's an important note too. And I think of, again, while you're of sound mind and body, and not waiting, because oftentimes, like to your point, Annalee, and we see this a lot, we wait until something happens. Something has happened in our own family, or something has happened adversely to someone that we know very well. And that is kind of the trigger, whereas I'm kind of just getting ahead of the game and having the binder, having those documents, having the best laid plan, and even maybe the backup plan to the best laid plan. It makes everything go smoothly, because when the stroke happens or something major happens, it's an emotional roller coaster to begin with. That wasn't the plan. That's not what we were hoping for, an accident or a major health crisis or things like that. And there's a lot of decisions to be made, but having this done ahead of time takes one giant burden off of the long list of stressful decisions that are going to have to be made.
Well, and just like a financial plan and an estate plan and a funeral burial plan, this is an aging plan. So they're all important. They're all important planning pieces if we want to have the best possible outcomes for our families. When I ask moms and dads, what are your goals as you age? It is always the same two things. I want to age in place at home, and I don't want to be a burden on my kids. But guess who is calling CareRight for an aging plan? It's the adult kids. Why? Because they got burned out and they're overwhelmed, and their parents, unfortunately, have become a burden.
We have a
On
couple
them
of
and their
questions.
marriages, their outlets.
I'm sorry, your internet was cutting out just a little bit. We have a couple of questions. What are some of the special considerations for special needs adults? Is it basically kind of a similar plan? It's just for a different aged person?
Yes, yeah, and it's still advocacy. One would hope no matter how old our loved ones are when they enter the healthcare system, that the healthcare workers are properly trained and supervised and know what they're doing. But in often cases, that's just not the case. So we have a whole advocacy. We teach our clients how to be a bold advocate. The grab and go binder should be a part of every person's life when they're planning. And in our grab and go binder, we have a special needs section that has a whole bunch of different considerations and documents to have in order as well. So it is similar to the special needs planning, except for our aging parents.
So one person says, how are you different from consolidated planning? And one thing that I want to say is consolidated planning, we're basically the financial side of the house. How much money do we need to fund a special needs trust? Who's going to care for my kid when I'm gone? What are other housing arrangements? We have lists and other things like that, but going deeper, Annalee's team's going to do that. So they don't work for us and we don't work for them when it comes to consolidated planning group versus CareRight. But I think that, there's a variety of people. We did a webinar with Annalee before with also the law office of Christina Lesher, because there's multiple people that you need on your team. We don't do the legal services, and Annalee doesn't do the legal documents. So the legal documents like wills and trusts and healthcare power of attorneys, those are all legal documents that are going to be necessary. So, basically what you're doing is you're assembling a team. How much do I need to fund a special needs trust? How do I keep my assets nimble for my own retirement that might be 25 to 35 years, but still have enough to fund a trust that for a family member that may be around for another 25 to 35 years when we're gone? Those are questions that we're going to answer. How do we make sure that we our loved one stays eligible for state and federally funded programs such as Medicaid waivers or, SSI or some of the other programs that are out there? So those are some of the things that we do. Tell us a little bit more about the differentiators that you guys do as well, Annalee.
Yeah, and I think you outlined that very well, Allison, because you're staying kind of on the financial piece of things, and we're doing family dynamics, family meetings, family relationships, and where is that current or future care needs going to, what does that look like based on what our client can afford? But the main thing is too, to keep in mind, is that we use a collaborative approach. Like CareRight uses a collaborative approach, and that's what Allison does as well, so that nobody is working in silos, because when professionals work in silos, that's when families fall through the cracks. So we would confer, like if you were working with Allison and then you were working with us, Allison and I would be conferring about your case as an example with you, so that we all are on the same page with what the goals are, what the resources are, and that way we can outline a viable plan for everybody that's in need of current or future care. So this is just a list
Can,
of some of the stuff that
can
we.
you just give us some examples of like some of the special needs cases that you've worked on in the past? Because, I know from our perspective and who we work with a wide variety of families. We have families that have a brand new diagnosis and they have a young child, and we have, families that their loved one with a disability is 57 years old or 65 and getting ready to turn on, Social Security. So I know we have a broad range, but kind of talk to us a little bit about the special needs side.
So we have a variety of clients. Like for example, just this morning, I picked up a new client. She's 47 and she has a traumatic brain injury from 20 years ago. And so when we're talking about special needs, we're talking about people who have an early onset disease of some sort, like early onset dementia. We're talking about mom and dad who always had Johnny, who has MS, and he always stayed at home with mom and dad, or someone with Down syndrome. Well, now that mom and dad are starting to fail at home, they're like, well, John has always lived with us. What do we do? Because we've always lived together. So when we're talking about special needs, we're talking about, we might be helping families. We might be helping 3 people at the same time, because if mom and dad have to move into a care community, for example, well, where is John going to go? And so that's how we do the special needs planning, is through the course of family meetings and the financial picture. That's going to outline what all 3 of their options can be, as an example. So those are some different examples: traumatic brain injury, cancer, early onset dementia, people who have aged out of their resources. So we've got some people that are in their 40s, who now their parents have, unfortunately, early onset dementia, and they're like, what am I supposed to do with my special needs son, because now we're not in a position to take care of him anymore. So there's a variety of different ways that we work with folks with special needs, but also thinking about, if you have children who have special needs and you're the parents, and then you get that phone call that your dad had a stroke, you're like, what am I going to do? Like, my child takes all of my time and energy and effort. How am I supposed to help my now aging parents through their medical crisis and beyond? So that's why we talk about aging planning and tying in that special needs planning as well.
One component that we think about when it comes to the special needs side of the house is a lot of our kids, whether adults or not, depending on their diagnosis, they don't adapt well with change. And so in the example of change, for example, one of their parents has died or fell ill and unable to provide the caregiving service they once did. That's kind of the rug being pulled out from under them. So we are really fans of looking this, because, we have some families that say, my little Johnny is going to live with me until the day I die, or my little Johnny is going to live with me as long as I am able. And if that's 85, then that's 85. And then we'll look at alternative solutions. But sometimes those alternative solutions, after little Johnny has spent the last 50 years living at home, it's a little overwhelming. So we like to see kind of a transition. There's all kinds of day and transition programs or day programs. Like if you have in mind, for instance, that you have a residential living facility that you love, and that is in the back of your mind that when you're gone, that is where your loved one will be, then you might want to involve them. This might be part of the plan, involve them in some of the day programs or summer programs or other programs, you know, in the years leading up to that time, so they have friends, they have community, they know where they're going. They're not a fish out of water. Now they've lost a parent, and now they're going to this new place that they've never been. So those are some examples where we've seen that the transition runs a little bit smoother. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next slide.
Yeah, and from a long-term care, healthcare space, that the industry is very challenged. Rooftops. Now is the time to plan ahead, because a lot of these good care communities have 3 to 5 or longer waiting list, 3 to 5 years waiting list. And so consumers don't always know that. You know, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And then you're like, oh my gosh, what if mom needs one level of care and dad needs a different level of care? What are we going to do then? And then that's when you find out you don't know if you're the power of attorney or if they have living will, you know, if they have long-term care insurance. So it's really just having these conversations so that we can be like, where are the gaps in your planning? Let's get everything buttoned up, and let's add the professionals to the team that you're going to need so that everyone has an effective aging and caregiving journey. So the aging process is bumpy.
That your 3 to 5 year list is true for the aging population and kind of the residential living and kind of where they can graduate. Like maybe they live semi-independent or independent and then semi-independent, and then they kind of can graduate their care as they age and as their health changes. But the 3 to 5 year list is pretty true in the special needs community as well. And a lot of the facilities, what we've seen, not that we call them facilities, but a lot of the places, they require tours. They require a tour to get yourself on the waiting list. And we suggest early planning and getting yourself on the waiting list. Just because you come up on the waiting list doesn't mean you have to say yes, but at least you have choices. And so that's true for any of you that are on here that are aging yourself and planning for your own future care, whether you're planning for aging parents or you're planning for your specific child or adult child with a disability. Those are those are a similar path.
Well, and people don't realize that to get into these care communities, you have to financially qualify. Your loved one has to physically qualify, cognitively and behaviorally qualify. And sometimes what happens, I know we're going off script a little bit, but what happens is people are so adamant about staying at home because they want to die at home or age in place at home, that by the time they realize it's not working or it's too expensive. My clients who are aging in place at home are spending $30,000 a month in home care for 24/7 home care. And that's not including all of the other professionals that have to come in, like physical therapy and occupational therapy and all that kind of stuff. But by the time families realize, hey, this isn't working out, or it's not safe, or we can't find reliable caregivers, then that's when your aging loved ones, or you, if you're the senior, that's when you end up in whatever care facility has an open bed. And I can promise you it will not be a good fit.
We do future care cost analysis all the time, and what we see, and we look at cost of care, a private room, a semi-private room, and what you're going to see across the country. And some states are much higher than others, but on average, it's going to be around $9 to $10,000 a month for living in a facility. That's on. And on the low end, on the special needs side, on the low end, we'd say $6,000, $6,500, all the way on up to $12,000 a month. So it's a pretty broad range, but that's where planning carefully financially, because again, one person may still have living expenses and be living at home, while one person has care needs within a facility. Two people may be needing to live in retirement for 25 to 35 years, while another person needs to live in a facility for 3. And it adds up exponentially. And a lot of times, Annalee, I think what people don't understand truly, some people have long-term care insurance that defrays a lot of this cost, which is great. But a lot of people don't, and they think that Medicare is going to help this. And Medicare has a very finite, limited amount of days that covers this type of care. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, because probably if I had to put a percentage on it, 95% of the families that we start working with, they all assume that Medicare or Medicaid, someone else is going to pay the care bill. And it's just, so when we do the care matrix and say, okay, well, these different assisted livings, it costs this much, this is how much memory care costs, this is how much home care costs, they're like, well, how does that get paid? And it's like, well, it's out of pocket unless you have long-term care insurance. So so Medicare is not long-term care insurance. And so, there's different rules, and that's a whole nother webinar about how that all works. But like, you have to meet certain Medicare criteria for a certain amount of time to be able to access that Medicare benefit. And it's not a long-term thing. So you may get some care costs covered for a short period of time, like in a skilled rehab unit, but you have to keep showing progress with the therapy. You have to keep working towards those goals. You have to be cooperative with therapy and a rehab candidate. And so there's Medicare has all these different guidelines that you have to pass for them to be able to continue to pay. But once you graduate with your therapy, because you're back to baseline or close enough to baseline, Medicare stops paying, and now it's up to you to take the initiative to keep up with your therapy on your own, or hire someone to help make sure that you keep up with your therapy. But that's why, that's one of the reasons I started Care Right, is because families are so misinformed or assume there's so many different assumptions, and you can't expect someone to make smart decisions if they're making decisions off of bad information. So, and that's really those family meetings that we're talking about on here. It's really helping you understand really how things work. So that you can make informed decisions and find out what are the goals, what is working well, what do you want to take off your caregiver plate? How long do you think you can keep mom at home, or how long do you think you can keep your husband at home before something bad happens to your own health? So it's a lot of discovery or exploratory conversations to get you to think about really the what whens of aging.
One thing I wanted to mention, so they call it a SNF, a skilled nursing facility, with Medicare. And so it's basically you have 100 days, but all 100 days aren't covered. And it often cuts off, you have co-pays due at the 60-day mark, but the person has to be making progress. So even though you have 100 days, if the individual isn't making progress, then it's kind of a hard, fast rule, and it ends, and they kick them out, and you get this phone call of saying, hey, what are you going to do? This is how much it is per day. This is how much it is per month. It's 10 grand a month, and your Medicare coverage is stopping effective tomorrow because we're not making progress. So these are real things that do happen. And so I just wanted to mention that because I think that there is a lot of myths. Now, while Medicare, isn't bad, I'm not raining on Medicare. I'm just saying that the 100 days, if you kind of Google how many skilled nursing days do I get, it's up to that amount, but there's a whole lot of hard, fast rules on that, on actually getting up to that amount.
And very few people do, unless they have feeding tubes or stage 4 pressure wounds. Like most people, when they're going into a skilled rehab, it's a broken hip, pelvic fracture. It's something, broken femur. It's something that is going to need 2 to 4 or maybe 6 weeks of therapy that Medicare A will pay. But very few people exhaust 100 days unless they, like I said, they have feeding tubes and skin sores and stuff like that. So let's talk a little bit about the grab and go binder, or let's talk about the care matrix. So the care matrix, because so many families come to us and they're unfortunately they've waited until they're crisis mode, and they're like, oh, we can't be there with her, and we just can't all drop our jobs and stuff like that to take care of mom anymore. So this care matrix that we talk about, the value proposition is it's a done for you project. We look at, okay, through the course of the family meetings, If mom and dad live in Tucson, Arizona, but their 4 kids live in 4 different states, the 4 kids may say, you know what, let's look to see what care options are available where we as adult kids live so that we can make informed decisions. So we look at what their current care needs would be and their future care needs. Again, if mom needs memory care and dad needs nursing home, most families don't want their loved ones to end up separated, but that's what happens when you choose not to plan. So we really don't want to have that happen to families. We want them to have the best possible aging outcomes possible. So the reason we do the care matrix is because it saves the family the time, money, and stress of just blindly touring facilities, taking a day off of work to blindly tour facilities and then find out you just toured 3 of the 6 facilities don't even have an opening, or your loved one doesn't have enough money, or they don't have all the levels of care that your parents are going to need, and then you just wasted all of that time. It also helps families understand the differences in care levels and jargon. Almost every family comes to us with, well, mom needs assisted living or nursing home, one of those care levels. They just don't know what the differences in care levels are. And so we educate families about what each level of care means and how much it's going to cost. We also do what families don't, because unfortunately, when families are coming to us, they're in crisis. So they don't know that you have to look at the state surveys. They're just making knee-jerk reactions of like, cool, this facility has an opening and they said that they can take mom. Well, did you do any due diligence? What's their state survey look? How many stars do they have? What's their staffing model? Do they have that next level of care that mom might need? Unfortunately, families wait until they're in crisis mode, and then they make those knee-jerk reactions, and then they call us and be like, hey, can you undo what we thought we knew? Well, sometimes we can and sometimes we can't. So just do it right the first time. Let's just put the aging plan in place. Let's do it right the first time. So when we talk about the grab and go binder, the reason the grab and go binder is so critical is because when I was an employee, before I started Care Right, I used to run these CCRCs. I used to be an executive director of continuing care retirement communities that have all the different care levels. Every single day for over 20 years, I had adult kids coming in because mom's in the hospital. She fell, she broke her hip. She's the caregiver to dad who has dementia. What are we supposed to do? Because the hospital says, here's a list of facilities. Go find one by noon tomorrow because we're discharging. These adult kids had no idea what questions to ask during the tour. They had no idea what to look for. When I would ask them, do your parents have a living will? Are you the power of attorney? Do they have long-term care insurance, VA benefits, anything? And they're like, I don't know. Our family never talks about stuff like that. And so when I started Care Right, when I left corporate America in 2011 and started Care Right, like I said, I went virtual and global right away because families just don't live near each other. But that grab and go binder is critical because that's how kids find out how ill prepared they are, or their families find out how ill prepared they are. And it can give us an opportunity to be like, okay, so we need to get the estate documents done. We need to get the burial arrangements taken care of. You have to outline your accounts, your passwords, all of those things have to be in place, because if you were named the financial power of attorney, for example, didn't even know that you were the financial power of attorney, let alone know what the accounts and passwords and banks are, and which bills get paid out of which account, you can't successfully do your job if you don't have the information you need or the tools you need to do your job. But the binder helps you get everything in order. There's a whole checklist. There's 12 tabs or 12 sections in the grab and go binder, and it's digital. So you can literally just print it off and start going through and make sure that you have all of your items buttoned up. Your beneficiary forms are updated, that the power of attorney documents are done and updated, that you didn't do them 20 years ago and that agent you named is either dead, demented, or you don't trust them anymore. So all of this piece saves families thousands of dollars as well, from preventing them from having to often go to guardianship court or conservatorship.
And I think those intentional conversations with your aging parents, what we see is, I would say it's probably upward 95% of people in general, not just aging population, either have no will or an outdated will, to your point that people are either deceased. We had one a couple of years ago, which was like the queen of all of that I've seen in my entire career, who in the will there were 10 successors, which I never see that many ever. And every single one of them was deceased, except for the last one who is 96 years old and had dementia. And
Yep.
I mean, I had never seen that in my career. So that is truly a thing. And then the other thing that you mentioned that I wanted to comment on, because I definitely experienced this in caregiving, is that the example of the hospitalization. Someone has fallen and they've broken their hip. Now we've had the surgery and when the hospital's ready to kick them out, but they can't go home. They need rehab. And clearly there's the social work department and they try to help line up the care. But it's a computerized system and they're shooting it out to see who has a bed. And the crazy thing is, when I had this experience, they came back and said, here's three places. Well, their little scorecard was D and F. They were terrible facilities. Like you wouldn't put your worst enemy there, let alone your loved one. And so if you have an experience with a person that has had some type of illness or surgery or accident, or in the hospital, and it is going to require a rehab, starting to do your due diligence on the front end, or, getting a list, checking with any of your nursing friends or people that know about these facilities that are around, and getting your name on a list for a bed and things. So those are going to be really, really important, because it is tough.
Well,
really
and
tough.
that's the point of, that's one of the points of the care matrix that we do, is so that families can understand, okay, well, if you wanted to move into this particular community, as an example, assisted living has a 4-year waiting list, or they don't have memory care and your loved one is going to need memory care. So that's part of the value proposition, is we have 5 to 8 different care communities that are viable options. And then what happens is, on that last family meeting where we're going through like the step-by-step aging plan, here's what we talked about, here's what we recommend, here's the referrals that you're going to need. Do you want Care Right to help you implement this aging plan and line up the tours and make the call to the home care companies and set up the estate attorney appointment, or are you going to do that as a family? Most families stay on our services to have us then kind of become that project manager, but that care advocate and that family advocate, to make sure that that aging plan gets implemented and tweaked and adjusted and the family is properly supported. Because those families who didn't stay on services, when we check in with them a couple 3 months later, if we even have time, we just stay focused on the people who want to work together, and so we don't chase people down. But like, if we follow up with that family that didn't stay on services, they'll be like, oh, mom fell again, dad's been in the hospital, we haven't done anything with the aging plan, we haven't done anything with the grab and go binder. Then that's when they then jump back on services to get everything squared away. Otherwise they went through that whole process for naught.
For sure. And some of the care considerations for special needs too, there were, you mentioned this earlier about the criteria of being accepted. Some of those criteria are being able to perform all of the activities of daily living. Some of them are being able to use the bathroom independently. Some of them have, knockout if there's any kind of violent outburst or things like that. But one of the big considerations as a company that we're looking at is the ability for a special needs individual to be able to age in place. So they may have a residential living situation that is great, and it's great now, and they're 28 years old, but can they stay there? Can they still be there at 58? If they're 58 and they're diagnosed with something, can they continue to stay there? Do they have, advanced care in the aging years? Because some places do, and a lot of places do not. So having that next in mind is definitely important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Here's a free checklist. You can take a picture of that QR code with your camera, and then you can get a free checklist if that's tricky for you. Because I'll be honest, I only learned how to do QR codes, like how to do it myself, like take a picture of the QR code. I only learned how to do that like a month ago because all the restaurants down here are starting to do it that way now. So if the QR code thing is tricky, you can just email me. My email information is on the slide, on the last slide here. If you need, so you can email wecare@carerightinc.com and that'll come to me as well. So if you have questions or you want to schedule a consult, Melanie is on, she has a QR code as well. She's my director of operations. We both do the 30-minute consults. It doesn't cost you anything other than 30 minutes of your time to say, okay, here's what my situation is. How might you be able to help me? So this way, if this topic hit home with you about aging and grab and go binder and family meetings and care options and care matrix and the landscape of healthcare, that's how you can be in touch with me. I am not like a email stalker at all. So like I'll have your email contact as well if you registered for this webinar, but we just send out like a monthly newsletter and that way people are like, hey, thanks for keeping me on your newsletter. We don't hound you and call you constantly. We don't call you at all. So if you reach out to us, that's great, but we'll just put you in our email kind of campaign, if you will, to send you once a month newsletters about things that would be of interest to you. And if it's not, then you can delete it. Or if it's something that hits home for you or someone that you know, you can forward that newsletter on.
One thing I wanted to talk about is family meetings. You know, people do people things, and sometimes families don't always get along. And but when it comes to mom and dad, we want to come together, but we would like it to be orchestrated and having a plan and working your plan. Have you ever, you know, orchestrated these family meetings in situations that maybe were less than ideal with favorable outcomes, you know, getting people to come together for the best interest of the loved one in mind?
Yeah, of course. So again, keep in mind, most people come to us in crisis mode, so we are never seeing them at their best. And by the time they come to us or by the time they find us, because we don't advertise, all of our clients come to us from word of mouth referrals or different webinars like this that I do. And so, unfortunately, by the time families come to us, their family dynamics are very strained. 92% of our families come to us in crisis mode. 85% of those families, I'm doing family mediation alongside of just trying to get the information that I need so that I can develop your customized aging plan. So, it gets really intense. That's why I try to do as many of these webinars as I can to say, family meetings when you're planning ahead, they're jovial, there's joking, there's laughter, there's joking around and kidding around back and forth. But when families choose, because it's a choice, because you're educated that there's a solution out here. But when families choose to wait until they're in crisis mode, that's when I'm doing family mediation, and that's much more complicated and takes a lot more skill and energy than families who do come to us in a proactive way. So yeah, most of our clients are coming to us in crisis and we're doing family mediation.
So, well, thank you for, you know, taking the time to go through this with us. I think it's really important. And one important note that I want to make, and I don't do this, and Annalee doesn't do this, but get your documents in place. Look at, do you have a will? Do you have a healthcare power of attorney? Do you have a HIPAA release? Do you have a power of attorney? And so that's for you and yourself. It's also for your adult neurotypical kids that you send off to college. Those documents, the healthcare power of attorney, HIPAA release, and power of attorney are good for your neurotypical kids. But asking and, you know, finding out, do the aging loved ones in your life, are their documents in place? Because what we've seen is it's a big mess. It's a big mess when somebody has a stroke and they're incapacitated and there is no healthcare power of attorney, there's no power of attorney, all the accounts were in their name, and so the other person isn't on the account. It starts being messy. So if you are taking notes today, my suggestion is to look and see what you have in place. Some of you have legal plans through your employers. If that's you, check with them. A lot of times they offer a free will in these documents through that legal service or legal plan. But it's not crazy expensive to get these set up. And I'm not a fan of do-it-yourself, special needs plan, elder care planning, things like that. But you are better off to download something off of the internet and go get it notarized than have nothing at all, or have something outdated with people's names that are deceased. So just put that on your agenda to kind of look and see what you already have in place and if it needs to be updated. Thank you, Annalee, for being here with us today. You gave us some great ideas and great tips. You guys can reach out to Melanie or Annalee and get your free 30-minute consultation. We always have a list of things to keep on your special needs planning radar. If you've attended our webinars in the past, you've definitely heard, we talk about, developing a comprehensive special needs care plan, future care cost estimate, SSI, Medicaid, beneficiary designations. There's so many topics. And all of these topics we've done past webinars on, they all live on our Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel, for which you can subscribe to for free. You're going to get the slides today that's going to have a link to our upcoming webinars, so you can kind of look at the topics out there to see what is in line for the stuff that you are on in your planning process. We work on a collaborative team here at Consolidated Planning Group, and we stand ready to help you plan for the loved one, for your future and the future of your loved one. And we meet people where we are. Some people come to us and they've done a lot of planning. Some people say, I'm embarrassed for you to see what I haven't done. And I always say it's not about looking back, it's about looking forward. We want to build on the foundation that you've already started. A lot of people got started and then they put it on the shelf. Life got busy and they put it on the shelf, and they had good intentions to pick it back up, and they never got it, picked back up. So we'll help you pick up wherever you are in that planning journey and help you get you where you need to be. We offer a free personalized consultation. This QR code will take you to our calendar, and you can schedule yourself a free consultation. So if you have additional questions that didn't get answered today, and then we'll be happy to answer those. But Annalee, I would just like to thank you again for being here with us. Again, I want to just mention to anybody who's listening to this on the podcast, we are happy to provide a copy of today's slides. Again, just email us at contact@cpgcares.net, and we'll be happy to send over those slides. And also the recording of today's webinar will also be on the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel. Thanks everyone for joining us. It's certainly been my pleasure, and we'll look forward to connecting with you again soon, Annalee. Take care.
Thank you.